In the dead of night, while a small college town slept peacefully under a blanket of November frost, an unimaginable horror unfolded. 4 promising young lives, dreams, ambitions, futures, violently extinguished in their beds. The victims never stood a chance. What first appeared as a random act of savagery revealed something far more terrifying. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no obvious motive. And then came the revelation that shook investigators to their core. The prime suspect wasn't just anyone. He was a Ph.D. student in criminology, a man who had dedicated his academic career to understanding the very monsters he now appeared to have become. But the most disturbing question wasn't how he did it, it was why. As authorities pieced together the timeline, a bone-terrifying pattern emerged. Had he been watching them, studying their movements, analyzing their habits with the calculated precision of the academic he was trained to be? The investigation unearthed layers of disturbing evidence suggesting this wasn't a crime of passion or opportunity. This was something meticulously planned by someone who believed he understood the science of murder well enough to commit the perfect crime. What psychological thread finally snapped in Bryan Kohberger's mind, transforming him from student to subject? Was this the ultimate case study, conducted by a man who crossed the line from observing killers to becoming one? And the question that continues to haunt everyone involved: did his expertise in criminology almost help him execute the perfect murder? Or was his academic knowledge the very thing that ensured he would eventually be caught? The answer lies within a twisted journey through the mind of a predator who thought he knew too much. The stillness of that Moscow night held a deceptive tranquility. Streetlights cast long, unwavering pools of light on quiet sidewalks, the kind where the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves in the late autumn air. Homes stood in darkened repose, windows like unblinking eyes staring out into the blackness. It was the kind of silence that lulls a town into a sense of impenetrable security, a quietude that suggested nothing could ever disturb its peaceful slumber. But beneath that veneer of calm, something was amiss, a silent intrusion that would shatter the town's perception of itself forever. Then a sound, barely audible at first, a fractured cry for help swallowed by the thick night. The faint, distorted echoes of a 911 call began to weave their way through the quiet, a desperate plea lost in the vast emptiness. Overlaid, a creeping unease began to take hold, an unsettling melody that hinted at the unimaginable horror unfolding within the walls of a seemingly ordinary home. They weren't just killed, they were hunted. Kaylee Goncalves, her bright smile often captured in sun-drenched photographs, a young woman full of life and future plans. Madison Mogen, inseparable from Kaylee, her own vibrant spirit shining through every shared picture. Xana Kernodle, known for her infectious energy and kindness. Ethan Chapin, a young man with a promising future ahead of him, visiting Xana that night. These were young lives, interwoven, full of the carefree joy of college, with no known shadows lurking in their bright orbits. They were the faces of youth, the embodiment of hope, and the idea that malice could touch them seemed an impossibility. A voice, tinged with disbelief and a dawning horror, cut through the growing tension. "We thought we lived in the safest town." The words hung in the air, a testament to the profound shock that rippled through the community, the shattering of an illusion they had held so dearly. The quiet streets, once symbols of security, now seemed to whisper a different story, a tale of vulnerability they had never imagined. But the killer had been there before, watching. An unseen presence, a shadow lurking in the periphery of their lives, observing their routines, their laughter, their bonds. The quiet nights, the seemingly ordinary days. Had they been under a silent, malevolent gaze? Had their sense of security been a fragile shield against an unseen threat that had been patiently waiting for its moment? The peaceful facade of Moscow held a secret, a terrifying truth hidden in the darkness, waiting to be fully revealed. Their lives unfolded like any other college students, a tapestry woven with shared laughter, late-night study sessions, and the bright promise of the future. Kaylee Goncalves, with her infectious energy and unwavering loyalty, dreamed of a career that would allow her to travel and experience the world. Her social media was a vibrant album of adventures, snapshots with friends, and a radiant smile that seemed to capture the very essence of joy. Madison Mogen, often by Kaylee's side, possessed a quiet strength and a keen intellect. Her aspirations were focused, her determination evident in her thoughtful posts and the close bonds she forged with those around her. Together, they were an inseparable force, their friendship a cornerstone of their young adult lives. Xana Kernodle brought a spark of vibrant enthusiasm to every room she entered. Her passion for marketing shone through her studies and her interactions with others. Her social media buzzed with activity, a reflection of her outgoing nature and her genuine connections. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was a bright and athletic young man, known for his easygoing charm and his dedication to his fraternity. Their relationship was a source of shared happiness, their presence together a familiar and comforting sight on campus. Their days were filled with the ordinary rituals of college life, classes, part-time jobs, gatherings with friends, the simple pleasures of youth on the cusp of independence. Their social media accounts offered glimpses into this world, snapshots of pizza nights, hiking trips, and the camaraderie of campus events. These were not lives marked by conflict or animosity. They were lives brimming with potential, interconnected by the threads of friendship and love. But the normalcy of their existence held an unseen fragility. Kaylee had recently moved out of the King Road home, but had returned that weekend for what was meant to be a final visit with her friends. It was a seemingly innocuous decision, a last goodbye to a chapter of her life before moving on to new adventures. In the casual exchanges of that weekend, a subtle disquiet flickered. Kaylee mentioned to a friend that she had a weird feeling that weekend, a vague unease that seemed to cling to the edges of her otherwise bright demeanor. It was a fleeting comment, perhaps easily dismissed in the moment, but in retrospect, it carries a terrifying weight, a whisper of a premonition that went unheeded. These were not random targets. They were individuals with distinct personalities, dreams, and connections. Their deaths, therefore, felt not just tragic, but a profound violation of the natural order, a brutal intrusion into lives brimming with promise. The randomness of their fate served only to amplify the horror, the unsettling reality that even in the perceived safety of a small college town, darkness could descend without warning, extinguishing young lives in a night of unimaginable violence. The vibrant snapshots of their lives, now frozen in time, serve as a stark reminder of what was lost, the potential that was so cruelly extinguished. The scene that unfolded inside the King Road residence was a stark tableau of horror, a brutal contrast to the quiet normalcy of the Moscow night. The initial police body camera footage, though intentionally blurred to shield the public from the graphic reality, painted a picture of a house abruptly transformed into a site of unimaginable violence. Investigators moved with grim purpose through the multi-story dwelling, the layout revealing a terrifying disparity in the events that had transpired within its walls. The house, a shared space for young roommates, held a disturbing dichotomy. On one floor, a sense of undisturbed quiet prevailed, while on another, the aftermath of a brutal attack lay in stark evidence. Reports indicated that two roommates on the ground floor were seemingly untouched by the violence that had erupted above. This detail added a layer of perplexing complexity to the crime, raising questions that lingered in the minds of investigators and the terrified community. How could such brutality occur within the confines of a single home, leaving some entirely unharmed? The nature of the attacks themselves began to suggest a disturbing level of precision. Initial observations at the scene indicated a lack of widespread signs of struggle in certain areas, hinting at a swift and brutal efficiency. As forensic teams meticulously documented the scene, a picture began to emerge that defied simple explanations of a crime fueled by rage. The wounds inflicted upon the victims spoke of a calculated and deliberate act, leading investigators to consider a motive far removed from a spontaneous outburst of violence. The insights of a forensic profiler, piecing together the fragmented evidence, offered a terrifying perspective. This wasn't rage, the voiceover might intone, the words carrying a weight of unsettling certainty. This was controlled cold, The assessment suggested a perpetrator operating with a terrifyingly detached focus, their actions driven by a purpose that transcended mere anger. This clinical nature of the violence sent a shiver of fear through the community, implying a level of premeditation and a capacity for calculated brutality that was deeply unsettling. Amidst the meticulous collection of evidence, a significant discovery was made: a K-bar knife sheath. Found at the scene, this tactical-style sheath became a focal point of the investigation. Its presence raised immediate and crucial questions. Was it a careless mistake by the perpetrator, a critical piece of evidence left behind in the chaos? Or was it something more deliberate, a calculated act, a silent and disturbing message left at the scene? The knife itself was nowhere to be found, making the sheath an even more enigmatic clue. This single piece of evidence, both tangible and yet frustratingly incomplete, hung heavy in the narrative, a silent testament to the brutal events and a potential key to unlocking the identity of the individual who had brought such terror to Moscow. The house, once a haven for young lives, now held secrets etched in blood and the lingering questions surrounding a single, ominous object. The focus of the investigation would eventually narrow, the lens turning towards an individual whose very academic pursuits seemed to mirror the darkness of the crime itself. Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old Ph.D. student immersed in the study of criminal behavior, became the central figure in this unfolding tragedy. His presence in the academic environment, a place dedicated to understanding the complexities of the human psyche, now took on a terrifyingly ironic dimension. Whispers began to emerge from the university community, recollections of Kohberger's unsettling classroom demeanor. Some described a detached intensity, an unnerving focus on the macabre aspects of criminal psychology. Online posts, unearthed from the digital ether, hinted at a troubled inner world, references to feelings of disassociation, painting a picture of someone grappling with a fractured sense of self. Further adding to the disquieting profile were reports of surveys he had reportedly sent to individuals within the criminal justice system, seeking insights into their motivations and behaviors, an academic curiosity that now seemed to carry a far more ominous undertone. As investigators delved deeper into Kohberger's background, a portrait of a complex and troubled individual began to take shape. His family life was described by some as emotionally cold and distant, a backdrop against which Kohberger had reportedly struggled with addiction and a profound sense of social isolation. This history painted a picture of a man perhaps yearning for connection, but finding himself increasingly adrift, a sense of alienation seemingly taking root. A recurring theme began to emerge from this exploration of his background, an apparent preoccupation with power and control. There was a suggestion of a deep-seated fear of being insignificant, of fading into the background, unseen and unheard. This desire to exert dominance, to command attention, seemed to be a driving force, a potential undercurrent in his psychological makeup. The insights of a profiler examining this emerging profile offered a disturbing hypothesis. He didn't just want to study killers, the voiceover might emphasize, the words laced with a terrifying understanding. He wanted to outsmart them. This suggested a dangerous ambition, a potential desire not merely to understand the criminal mind, but to operate within its shadows, perhaps believing himself capable of orchestrating the ultimate crime and evading detection. Crucially, the investigation began to yield tangible evidence linking Kohberger to the scene. Cell phone location data placed him in the vicinity of the King Road residence on multiple occasions leading up to the murders, and crucially, during the time the crime is believed to have occurred. Surveillance footage painstakingly collected from the area reportedly captured a white Hyundai Elantra, a vehicle matching the description of one owned by Kohberger, in the vicinity of the house during the early morning hours of the murders. This convergence of digital and visual evidence began to solidify the connection, painting a picture of a suspect whose academic interest in crime may have taken a dark and terrifying turn. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, each new revelation adding another layer of terrifying clarity to the horrifying events in Moscow. The digital realm, often a space of fleeting interactions and forgotten posts, began to yield unsettling clues, casting a harsh light on the inner workings of Bryan Kohberger's mind. Deep within the archives of Reddit, investigators unearthed terrifying surveys, their questions probing the very core of the emotional experience during the commission of a crime. The language, the specific inquiries into the feelings of perpetrators, bore a disquieting resemblance to Kohberger's known academic interests, raising the terrifying possibility that these surveys were not merely academic exercises, but a glimpse into his own disturbing contemplations. Further exploration of his digital footprint revealed a darker turn. Kohberger's search history painted a picture of a man consumed by the intricacies of evading detection. Queries about methods of avoiding forensic analysis, the lifespan of DNA evidence, and strategies for eluding law enforcement surfaced, suggesting a meticulous planning phase that belied the brutal nature of the crime. Interspersed with these searches were articles and news reports detailing the very investigation he would soon become the focus of, hinting at a morbid fascination with the unfolding aftermath. A significant breakthrough in the investigation came through an unexpected avenue: familial DNA. The DNA found on the K-bar knife sheath, the silent witness left at the scene, did not directly match Bryan Kohberger. However, it matched his father. This crucial link allowed investigators to pursue a familial DNA search, ultimately leading them back to Bryan Kohberger as a potential suspect. The discarded sheath, initially a question mark, now became a damning piece of the puzzle, connecting him to the brutal acts through the invisible threads of heredity. But perhaps one of the most unsettling revelations lay in the realm of social media. Reports began to surface suggesting that Bryan Kohberger may have directly interacted with one of the victims prior to the killings. Direct messages, the ephemeral exchanges of the digital age, hinted at a potential connection, however tenuous, between the suspect and one of the young women whose life was so tragically cut short. The nature of these messages remained shrouded in speculation, but their existence added a disturbing layer to the narrative, suggesting the possibility that the victims were not entirely unknown to him. This revelation ignited a crucial question that hung heavy in the air. Were Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan random targets of a brutal act, or were they specifically chosen? Did Kohberger's alleged interest in criminal behavior extend beyond academic study into the realm of personal obsession? The possibility that these vibrant young lives were deliberately selected, that the weird feeling Kaylee had expressed might have been a brush with a premonition, sent a fresh wave of unease through the community. The digital footprint, once a trail of seemingly innocuous online activity, now painted a portrait of a man whose intellectual curiosity may have morphed into something far more sinister, leaving the terrifying question of motive unanswered. A dark cloud hanging over the search for justice. The brutal aftermath of the King Road murders sent shockwaves far beyond the quiet streets of Moscow, Idaho. Families were irrevocably shattered, their lives plunged into a grief so profound it seemed to defy articulation. A community that once prided itself on its tranquility now grappled with a deep-seated trauma, the sense of safety irrevocably lost. The legal proceedings that followed became a focal point, a slow and agonizing march towards accountability. Throughout the courtroom appearances, Bryan Kohberger maintained a striking demeanor. Observers noted a consistent calmness, a seemingly detached and calculating presence. There were no outward displays of remorse, no visible cracks in the stoic facade he presented to the world. This apparent lack of emotion only deepened the unease surrounding the case, fueling speculation about the inner workings of his mind. Experts from various fields weighed in, attempting to decipher the motivations behind such a horrific act. Was this the terrifying trajectory of a serial killer in the making, his academic fascination with crime evolving into a real-world manifestation of violence? Or was it a case of an academic mind that had somehow fractured, a descent into an unimaginable madness? The lack of a clear motive, the absence of any overt connection to the victims beyond the alleged social media interaction, left a void that fueled endless speculation and fear. The fundamental question remained unanswered. Why Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan? Despite the mounting evidence linking Kohberger to the crime scene, The specific reason for their selection remained shrouded in mystery. There was no manifesto, no confession to offer a glimpse into the killer's rationale. This absence of a discernible motive added another layer of terrifying uncertainty to the narrative, leaving the families and the community grappling with the senselessness of it all. In the lingering silence of unanswered questions, a final, unsettling thought began to take hold. Was this Bryan Kohberger's first act of such extreme violence, or was the horrific night on King Road simply the first time he was caught? The meticulous planning suggested by his digital footprint, coupled with the lack of any prior known offenses, raised the specter of a hidden past. Had other shadows lurked in his history, unseen and undetected? The possibility that this brutal crime was not an isolated incident, but perhaps the culmination of a darker, previously concealed trajectory, left a terrifying final note hanging in the air, a haunting reminder of the depths of the unknown.